Sarah Martinez had never intended to become a symbol of anything. Growing up in a small town in Texas, she was simply the daughter of a mechanic and a school teacher who happened to be faster, stronger, and more determined than most of the boys in her class. Her father, Miguel Martinez, had served 2 tours in Vietnam before coming home to rebuild engines and raise a family. He never spoke much about his time in the service, but Sarah could see something in his eyes when he watched the news or when veterans gathered at the local VFW hall. The first time Sarah expressed interest in joining the military, her mother, Elena, had sat her down at their kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a serious expression. Elena had watched her husband struggle with nightmares and had seen too many young men from their town come home changed or not come home at all. But she had also raised a daughter who possessed an unshakable sense of purpose and an almost supernatural ability to achieve whatever she set her mind to. Sarah's path to the Navy SEALs began in high school, where she dominated in 3 sports and maintained a 4.0 GPA. Her track coach, a former Marine named Coach Rodriguez, was the first person to suggest that her combination of physical ability, mental toughness, and leadership qualities might serve her well in the military. Unlike many of her classmates who planned to attend college immediately after graduation, Sarah had already decided that she needed to test herself against something bigger than academic achievements or athletic records. The Navy recruiter who visited their high school career fair was a seasoned petty officer named James Thompson who had served on multiple deployments in the Middle East. He had given the standard presentation about travel opportunities and educational benefits, but when Sarah approached him afterward with questions about special operations, he initially tried to steer her toward more traditional Navy roles. It wasn't until she pressed him specifically about SEAL training that he realized she wasn't asking out of casual curiosity. Thompson spent an hour after the career fair talking with Sarah about the realities of military life, the physical demands of special operations, and the mental challenges that broke even the strongest candidates. He was honest about the fact that no woman had ever successfully completed SEAL training, and he explained the physiological and cultural barriers that made such an achievement seemingly impossible. But Sarah listened to every word without interrupting, and when he finished, she simply asked what she needed to do to get the opportunity to try. The months leading up to her enlistment were spent in preparation that bordered on obsession. Sarah's typical day began at 4:30 a.m. with a 5-mile run through the hills outside their town. She had converted their garage into a makeshift gym, using equipment her father had built from scrap metal and concrete. Her training regimen included hours of swimming in the local lake, regardless of weather conditions, and strength training that pushed her body to its absolute limits. Her parents watched with a mixture of pride and concern as their daughter transformed herself into something resembling a professional athlete. Miguel helped her design training scenarios that mimicked military obstacles, while Elena ensured that her academic preparation didn't suffer. Sarah spent her evenings studying military history, learning about special operations tactics, and memorizing everything she could find about Navy SEAL training protocols. When Sarah finally left for basic training, she carried with her not just the physical conditioning and mental preparation she had developed over months of intensive training, but also the quiet confidence that came from having faced down every doubt and discouragement that had been placed in her path. Her drill instructors quickly learned that traditional intimidation tactics had little effect on someone who had already decided that failure was not an option. Basic training revealed Sarah's ability to excel not just individually, but as a leader who could elevate the performance of everyone around her. While other recruits struggled with the transition from civilian to military life, Sarah adapted with an ease that impressed even the most experienced instructors. She helped struggling classmates with physical training, tutored those who had difficulty with academic requirements, and never complained about the demanding schedule or harsh conditions. Her platoon graduated at the top of their class, and Sarah finished first in overall performance rankings. More importantly, she had earned the respect of instructors who had initially questioned whether she belonged in the military at all. Her company commander, a tough Marine veteran named Sergeant Major Williams, wrote in her evaluation that he had never seen a recruit display such a complete combination of physical capability, mental toughness, and natural leadership ability. The transition from basic training to advanced military training brought new challenges and higher stakes. Sarah's scores on physical fitness tests consistently placed her in the top 5% of all recruits, male or female. Her marksmanship ratings earned expert classifications on multiple weapon systems. Her leadership evaluations indicated an almost instinctive ability to make sound decisions under pressure and to inspire others to perform beyond their perceived limitations. But it was during a particularly grueling training exercise designed to test recruits' ability to function under extreme stress that Sarah first demonstrated the kind of performance that would later define her military career. The exercise involved a simulated combat scenario where recruits had to navigate through a series of obstacles while under simulated enemy fire. Most recruits completed the course within the acceptable time parameters, but Sarah not only finished in record time, she also went back to help two classmates who had become injured during the exercise. Her instructors watched in amazement as this small woman carried a recruit who outweighed her by 50 pounds through the final portion of the obstacle course, refusing to leave anyone behind despite the fact that doing so cost her valuable time and energy. When questioned about her decision afterward, Sarah simply stated that the mission wasn't complete until everyone made it home safely. Word of Sarah's exceptional performance began to spread through the training command, reaching the attention of officers involved in special operations recruitment. The Navy had recently begun exploring the possibility of integrating women into previously male-only special operations programs, and Sarah's combination of physical ability and mental toughness made her an ideal candidate for what would essentially be an experimental program. The conversation that would change the trajectory of Sarah's military career took place in a small office at the training facility, where she was called to meet with Captain Robert Hayes, a SEAL officer who served as a liaison between Special Operations Command and the traditional Navy. Captain Hayes had reviewed Sarah's training records and had observed her performance during several exercises. He was direct in his assessment that she possessed the raw materials necessary for special operations training, but he was equally honest about the fact that she would be entering uncharted territory. The opportunity to attempt SEAL training came with no guarantees and significant risks. If she failed, there would be no second chances, and her military career would likely continue along more traditional paths. If she succeeded, she would face scrutiny and challenges that no previous SEAL candidate had ever encountered. Captain Hayes gave her 24 hours to consider the decision and warned her that once she committed to the path, there would be no backing down. Sarah's decision required no deliberation. She had spent her entire life preparing for exactly this kind of opportunity, even before she fully understood what form it might take. That evening, she called her parents to inform them of the opportunity and her decision to pursue it. Her father's response was simple and direct. He told her that he was proud of her regardless of the outcome, and that the only failure would be in not trying. Her mother's response was more emotional, but equally supportive, reminding Sarah that she had never failed at anything she had truly committed herself to achieving. The paperwork for Sarah's transfer to SEAL training was processed with unusual speed, reflecting the high level of interest in the outcome of this experimental integration. Within 2 weeks, she found herself at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center, standing among a group of male candidates who represented some of the most physically and mentally capable individuals the military had to offer. The first day of SEAL training traditionally began with a speech from the commanding officer about the history and traditions of the Navy SEALs, the standards that candidates would be expected to meet, and the reality that most of them would not successfully complete the program. When Commander Patricia Sullivan addressed Sarah's training class, she acknowledged the historic nature of having a woman among the candidates, but made it clear that standards would not be modified or adjusted in any way. Sarah listened to the commander's words with the same quiet intensity that had characterized her approach to every previous challenge. She understood that she was carrying the weight of expectations and the responsibility of proving that integration could be successful. But more than that, she understood that she was finally in the place she had been preparing for her entire life, surrounded by the kind of challenge that would reveal whether all of her preparation had been sufficient. The physical training that began immediately after the orientation briefing was designed to push candidates beyond their perceived limitations and to identify those who possessed the mental toughness necessary to continue when their bodies told them to quit. Sarah had trained extensively for these challenges, but experiencing them firsthand revealed new levels of difficulty that no amount of preparation could fully simulate. The first week of training included timed runs, swimming tests, obstacle courses, and strength challenges that eliminated nearly 20% of the candidates. Sarah not only met every standard, she exceeded most of them by significant margins. Her swimming times placed her among the top performers in the class. Her running speed consistently ranked in the top 5, and her performance on strength tests impressed instructors who had initially wondered whether she would be physically capable of keeping up with her male classmates. But the physical challenges were only one component of a training program designed to test every aspect of a candidate's capability. The academic requirements included advanced courses in military tactics, weapons systems, navigation, communications, and emergency medical procedures. Sarah's academic performance matched her physical achievements, with test scores that consistently placed her at the top of the class rankings. More challenging than either the physical or academic requirements were the psychological pressures that increased steadily as training progressed. Candidates were subjected to sleep deprivation, extreme weather conditions, and scenarios designed to create maximum stress and confusion. The instructors watched carefully to identify candidates who could maintain their composure and continue to function effectively when circumstances became overwhelming. Sarah's response to these psychological challenges revealed the depth of mental preparation she had undertaken before arriving at training. While other candidates showed signs of stress and fatigue that affected their performance, Sarah seemed to thrive under pressure. Her decision-making remained clear and logical. Her physical performance actually improved during high-stress scenarios, and her ability to support and encourage struggling classmates never wavered. The end of the first month of training marked a significant milestone, as candidates who had survived this initial phase had demonstrated their ability to meet the basic requirements of the program. But Sarah understood that the real challenges lay ahead in advanced training phases that would test skills and abilities she had only theoretical knowledge of. The foundation she had built through months of preparation and weeks of intense training would soon face tests that would determine whether she could become not just the first woman to complete SEAL training, but one of the elite warriors the program was designed to produce. The second phase of SEAL training, known informally among candidates as the breaking point, began with Hell Week, 7 days designed to push human endurance beyond what most people believe possible. Sarah had read accounts of Hell Week, studied training manuals, and spoken with former SEALs about their experiences, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of being awakened at midnight by instructors firing blank rounds and shouting orders through bullhorns. The chaos that followed was carefully orchestrated to create maximum confusion and stress. Candidates were ordered to dress in full gear and report to the beach, where they would spend the next several hours immersed in surf that was deliberately timed to coincide with the coldest ocean temperatures of the year. The surf torture, as it was known among instructors, involved lying in the breaking waves while instructors shouted instructions, and criticism designed to break down mental defenses and identify candidates who would quit when conditions became unbearable. Sarah had trained extensively in cold water, but the combination of Pacific Ocean temperatures, sleep deprivation, and psychological pressure created a level of misery she had never experienced. Around her, she could hear other candidates beginning to show signs of breaking down. Some were shivering uncontrollably, others were muttering prayers or curses under their breath, and a few were already beginning to consider the option of ringing the bell that would end their participation in the program. The bell represented both salvation and defeat. Located prominently near the training area, it offered immediate relief from whatever torture candidates were currently enduring. Ringing the bell meant hot food, warm clothes, and a return to normal military life. But it also meant the end of dreams that most candidates had carried for years. Sarah had promised herself that she would never ring that bell, regardless of what challenges she faced. But as hours passed in the freezing surf, she began to understand why so many candidates made that choice. What sustained Sarah through the worst moments of Hell Week was not just her physical conditioning or mental toughness, but a deep understanding of her own motivations for being there. She had not come to SEAL training to prove anything to anyone else, or to make a political statement about women in combat roles. She had come because she genuinely believed that this was what she was meant to do with her life, and that belief provided a foundation that external pressures could not shake. The physical challenges of Hell Week included runs on soft sand that seemed to last forever, carrying boats that weighed hundreds of pounds over obstacles that required perfect teamwork, and completing tasks that required focus and precision while operating on minimal sleep and maximum stress. Sarah discovered that her smaller size, which some candidates had assumed would be a disadvantage, actually provided benefits in certain situations. She could move through confined spaces more easily than larger candidates, required less food and water to maintain energy levels, and could maintain body heat more effectively during cold weather operations. But Hell Week was designed to test more than individual performance. The boat crews that candidates were assigned to functioned as teams, and the success or failure of these teams depended on how well candidates could work together under extreme stress. Sarah found herself assigned to a boat crew that included some of the strongest and most competitive candidates in the class, men who had initially questioned whether having a woman on their team would hurt their performance. Their concerns evaporated during the first major boat evolution, a timed exercise that required the crew to carry their boat over a series of obstacles while navigating through surf and around barriers. Sarah's performance during this exercise demonstrated not just her physical capability, but her ability to anticipate what her teammates needed and to provide support in ways that enhanced the entire team's effectiveness. Her boat crew finished the exercise in the fastest time recorded for any team that day. The sleep deprivation component of Hell Week created challenges that were different from, but equally demanding as the physical tests. Candidates were allowed minimal rest periods, never more than a few hours at a time, and were often awakened with new tasks just as they began to fall asleep. The lack of sleep affected judgment, reaction time, and emotional stability in ways that revealed character traits that might not otherwise be apparent. Sarah had prepared for sleep deprivation by deliberately limiting her rest during the months leading up to training, but the combination of extreme physical exertion and minimal sleep created a level of exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm even her carefully developed mental disciplines. She found that the key to maintaining performance was to focus completely on whatever task was immediately in front of her, rather than thinking about how much longer the ordeal would continue or how tired she felt. During the third day of Hell Week, an incident occurred that would later be cited as evidence of Sarah's exceptional character and leadership potential. One of her teammates, a candidate named Marcus Thompson who had been struggling with the psychological pressure, began to show signs of serious distress during a particularly grueling boat exercise. Thompson was a former college football player who possessed impressive physical strength, but the combination of cold, exhaustion, and constant pressure had begun to break down his mental defenses. Sarah noticed that Thompson was becoming disoriented and was no longer responding appropriately to instructions from the boat crew leader. Without calling attention to Thompson's condition or embarrassing him in front of the instructors, Sarah quietly repositioned herself to provide additional support and began offering encouragement in a way that helped Thompson regain his focus and continue with the exercise. Her intervention probably saved Thompson from dropping out of the program, but more importantly, it demonstrated the kind of situational awareness and concern for teammates that instructors look for in potential SEALs. The instructors had observed the entire incident, and Sarah's actions were noted in her training file as evidence of mature leadership under pressure. The fourth day of Hell Week brought what many candidates considered the most challenging evolution of the entire program. Night navigation exercises that required teams to travel several miles over difficult terrain while carrying full equipment loads and completing tasks at various checkpoints. The exercise was conducted in complete darkness, with teams navigating by compass and map while avoiding obstacles and staying on course despite fatigue that made concentration extremely difficult. Sarah's team was assigned a route that included river crossings, steep climbs, and navigation through dense woods. The weight of their equipment, combined with 4 days of accumulated exhaustion, made every step a conscious effort. Several times during the exercise, team members stumbled or became disoriented, requiring the team to stop and regroup before continuing. Sarah's performance during this exercise revealed capabilities that surprised even her instructors. Her navigation skills, developed through years of outdoor activities and refined during months of preparation, allowed her to maintain accurate course headings even when other team members became confused about their location. Her physical conditioning, which had sustained her through the previous days of Hell Week, seemed to improve rather than deteriorate as the exercise continued. But perhaps most impressively, Sarah's leadership during this exercise demonstrated an intuitive understanding of how to motivate and support teammates who were approaching their breaking points. When one team member began to lag behind due to an injury he was trying to hide, Sarah redistributed equipment to reduce his load without making his weakness obvious to the instructors. When another team member became overwhelmed by the complexity of the navigation requirements, Sarah patiently helped him understand their route without making him feel incompetent. The team completed their night navigation exercise in record time, but more importantly, they completed it with all team members intact and functioning. Other teams lost candidates during the exercise as the combination of physical and mental challenges proved too much for some participants. Sarah's team not only finished first, but they finished with higher morale and better cohesion than when they started. The final days of Hell Week focused on scenarios designed to simulate combat conditions and test candidates' ability to function effectively when lives were at stake. These exercises included medical emergency simulations, hostage rescue scenarios, and tactical operations that required split-second decision-making under pressure. The instructors escalated the stress levels by introducing time pressures, equipment failures, and unexpected complications that forced candidates to adapt their plans on the fly. Sarah's performance during these tactical exercises revealed a level of situational awareness and decision-making ability that impressed instructors who had initially wondered whether she would be able to handle the combat-related aspects of SEAL training. Her ability to assess rapidly changing situations, develop effective responses, and communicate clearly with teammates proved that her preparation had included not just physical conditioning, but a deep understanding of military tactics and leadership principles. The medical training component of these final exercises tested candidates' ability to provide emergency care under combat conditions. Sarah's performance during medical scenarios was particularly impressive, as her smaller hands allowed her to perform certain procedures more effectively than larger candidates. And her calm demeanor under pressure helped stabilize teammates who were playing the roles of wounded personnel. When Hell Week officially ended, 60% of the candidates who had started the exercise had rung the bell and withdrawn from the program. The candidates who remained represented an elite group of individuals who had demonstrated the physical capability, mental toughness, and character necessary to continue with advanced SEAL training. Sarah was not only among those who completed Hell Week. She had done so with performance evaluations that ranked her among the top candidates in the class. The aftermath of Hell Week brought both recognition and new challenges. Sarah's successful completion of what many considered the most demanding military training exercise in the world attracted attention from military leadership, media outlets, and advocacy groups interested in women's roles in combat. But Sarah was more concerned with the next phase of training, which would focus on the specialized skills that distinguish Navy SEALs from other military units. Advanced combat training included instruction in weapons systems, explosives, underwater operations, and tactical planning that required a different type of preparation than the endurance-based challenges of Hell Week. Sarah approached these new challenges with the same systematic preparation that had characterized her earlier training, but she understood that success in these areas would require developing entirely new skill sets rather than simply applying physical and mental toughness. The weapons training portion of Advanced SEAL instruction covered everything from pistols and rifles to heavy machine guns and specialized equipment used in special operations. Sarah's previous experience with firearms was limited to basic military training, but she demonstrated an aptitude for marksmanship that surprised her instructors. Her smaller size actually provided advantages in certain shooting positions, and her steady hands and ability to control breathing under pressure resulted in accuracy scores that consistently ranked among the best in the class. Explosives training required a level of precision and attention to detail that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Sarah's academic performance had always been strong, but the complexities of calculating blast patterns, timing sequences, and safety protocols required a different type of intellectual discipline. Her methodical approach to learning and her ability to remain calm under pressure served her well in this demanding curriculum. The underwater operations component of SEAL training tested candidates' ability to function effectively in an environment where traditional military skills required significant adaptation. Sarah had been an accomplished swimmer since childhood, but SEAL diving operations involved equipment and techniques that required extensive practice to master. Her comfort in the water and her ability to maintain composure when equipment malfunctioned made her one of the stronger performers in this critical area. As advanced training progressed, it became clear that Sarah was not simply surviving the program. She was excelling in ways that suggested she would become an exceptional SEAL operator. Her combination of physical capability, intellectual capacity, and leadership skills had been refined and enhanced by months of intensive training. But the final test would come in field exercises that would simulate actual combat operations and determine whether candidates could apply their training in realistic scenarios where mistakes could have serious consequences. The final phase of SEAL training took place in environments designed to replicate the conditions that operational teams encountered in real-world missions. Sarah and the remaining candidates were transported to training facilities that included desert terrain, urban combat simulators, maritime environments, and mountainous regions where they would be tested on their ability to apply everything they had learned during the previous months of intensive instruction. The first major field exercise placed candidates in a simulated hostage rescue scenario that required precise coordination between team members and flawless execution under time pressure. The scenario involved infiltrating a compound where instructors playing the roles of terrorists held captive several role players representing civilian hostages. Candidates were required to plan and execute a rescue operation that neutralized the threats while ensuring the safety of all hostages. Sarah was assigned to a 4-person team that included Marcus Thompson, the candidate she had helped during Hell Week, along with 2 other top performers from their training class. The team leader was David Chun, a former Marine who had consistently ranked among the top candidates in all phases of training. Chin's initial response to having Sarah on his team had been professional but cautious, as he was concerned about how the dynamics of their team might be affected by having the only woman in the program as a member. The planning phase of the hostage rescue exercise revealed the extent to which Sarah had absorbed the tactical training she had received during the previous months. Her analysis of the compound layout identified several security vulnerabilities that other teams had missed, and her proposed approach to the infiltration addressed potential complications that could derail the mission if not properly planned for. Chin quickly realized that Sarah's contributions to the team were based not on any desire to prove herself, but on a genuine understanding of tactics and an ability to think strategically about complex problems. The execution of the rescue operation required each team member to perform multiple tasks simultaneously while maintaining awareness of rapidly changing conditions. Sarah's assignment included providing overwatch security from an elevated position while monitoring radio communications and coordinating with team members who were entering the compound. The complexity of her role required her to track multiple variables while remaining prepared to engage threats that might emerge from unexpected directions. During the critical moment of the operation, when Chun and Thompson were extracting the hostages from the compound, Sarah detected movement in an area that was supposed to be clear of hostile forces. Her training had emphasized the importance of positive target identification before engaging, but the time pressure of the situation and the safety of her teammates required an immediate decision. Sarah's assessment of the threat was accurate, and Her engagement prevented what would have been a successful counterattack by the opposing force. The after-action review of the exercise highlighted several aspects of Sarah's performance that impressed the evaluating instructors. Her tactical awareness had been superior to that demonstrated by most candidates. Her marksmanship under pressure had been exceptional, and her ability to coordinate multiple tasks without losing focus on her primary responsibilities indicated a level of capability that was rare even among successful SEAL candidates. But perhaps most significantly, the chemistry between Sarah and her teammates during the exercise had been seamless. Chin reported that having Sarah on the team had enhanced their overall effectiveness rather than creating the complications he had initially worried about. Thompson credited Sarah's calm professionalism with helping him maintain focus during the most stressful moments of the operation. The fourth team member, James Rodriguez, noted that Sarah's contributions had made him a better operator by forcing him to maintain the same high standards that she consistently demonstrated. The maritime operations phase of field training tested candidates' ability to conduct operations in and around water environments that were fundamental to SEAL mission capabilities. These exercises included underwater infiltrations, beach reconnaissance, ship boarding operations, and combat swimmer techniques that required mastery of specialized equipment and procedures. Sarah's comfort in aquatic environments, which had been evident since the beginning of training, became even more pronounced during these complex operations. The underwater infiltration exercise required candidates to swim several miles while carrying equipment and navigating to specific coordinates using underwater navigation techniques. The exercise was conducted in ocean conditions that included significant wave action and limited visibility that made navigation extremely challenging. Sarah's performance during this exercise was remarkable not just for her technical proficiency, but for her ability to maintain precise navigation while assisting a teammate who was struggling with equipment problems. During the swim, Rodriguez began experiencing difficulties with his breathing apparatus that could have forced him to abort the mission and surface prematurely. Sarah recognized the problem and was able to share her equipment with Rodriguez in a way that allowed both of them to complete the exercise successfully. Her quick thinking and willingness to accept additional risk to help a teammate demonstrated the kind of character that SEAL instructors look for in candidates. The shipboarding exercise tested candidates' ability to approach and capture a vessel held by hostile forces, a mission type that required climbing skills, tactical coordination, and the ability to clear confined spaces while under fire. Sarah's smaller size proved to be an advantage during this exercise, as she could move through the ship's passages more quickly than larger candidates, and could access areas that were difficult for others to reach. Her performance during the ship clearing operation was particularly impressive. Working with Chun as her partner, Sarah demonstrated room clearing techniques that were both faster and more thorough than those used by other candidate pairs. Her ability to communicate effectively with Chun using hand signals and minimal verbal cues indicated a level of tactical maturity that typically required years of operational experience to develop. The urban warfare training phase placed candidates in scenarios that simulated operations in populated areas where the distinction between combatants and civilians created additional complexity. These exercises tested not only tactical skills, but judgment and decision-making abilities that were critical to mission success in environments where mistakes could have serious political and humanitarian consequences. The urban scenario assigned to Sarah's team involved locating and capturing a high-value target who was hiding in a civilian area while avoiding civilian casualties and minimizing collateral damage. The exercise required the team to gather intelligence, plan their approach, and execute the capture operation while being observed by role players representing local civilians who might either assist or hinder their efforts. Sarah's role during the intelligence-gathering phase of the operation demonstrated her ability to blend into civilian environments and obtain information without alerting potential hostile forces to the team's presence. Her appearance and demeanor allowed her to interact with civilian role players in ways that would have been impossible for her male teammates, providing the team with intelligence that proved crucial to the success of their mission. During the actual capture operation, Sarah's performance revealed capabilities that extended beyond the physical and tactical skills that had characterized her earlier training. Her ability to read the behavior of civilian role players and distinguish between those who posed potential threats and those who were genuinely neutral allowed the team to focus their attention on actual dangers rather than being distracted by false alarms. The mountain warfare phase of field training tested candidates' ability to operate in high-altitude environments where cold weather, difficult terrain, and equipment limitations created challenges that required both individual resilience and team coordination. Sarah had trained extensively in mountainous terrain during her preparation for SEAL training, but the combination of altitude, weather, and tactical requirements created difficulties that surpassed anything she had previously experienced. The mountain exercise required teams to traverse several miles of difficult terrain while carrying full combat loads and completing mission objectives that included reconnaissance, target acquisition, and extraction operations. The high altitude affected all candidates' performance to some degree, but Sarah's cardiovascular conditioning and her efficient movement techniques allowed her to maintain effectiveness better than many of her teammates. During a particularly challenging phase of the mountain exercise, Sarah's team was required to establish an observation post on a peak that could only be reached by technical climbing techniques. Sarah's rock climbing experience, which she had developed during years of outdoor activities, made her the natural choice to lead the climb and establish anchor points for the rest of the team. Her performance during the climb was flawless, but more importantly, her teaching and encouragement helped teammates who were less experienced with technical climbing to complete the ascent safely and efficiently. The observation post that the team established provided intelligence that was crucial to the overall success of the exercise, and Sarah's leadership during the climbing phase was cited as a key factor in the mission's completion. The final field exercise was designed as a comprehensive test that combined elements from all previous training phases and required candidates to demonstrate their ability to plan and execute complex operations with minimal instructor guidance. The exercise scenario involved a multi-day operation that included infiltration, reconnaissance, target elimination, and extraction phases that tested every skill candidates had learned during their months of training. Sarah's team was assigned an operation that required them to infiltrate enemy territory, gather intelligence on a simulated weapons facility, and then execute a raid that would destroy the facility while capturing key personnel for interrogation. The complexity of the operation required detailed planning, precise timing, and flawless execution by all team members. The planning phase revealed the extent to which Sarah had developed not just tactical skills, but strategic thinking abilities that allowed her to analyze complex problems and develop effective solutions. Her contributions to the mission plan included innovative approaches to several challenges that impressed both her teammates and the evaluating instructors. Her ability to identify potential complications and develop contingency plans demonstrated a level of operational maturity that was exceptional for a candidate. The execution of the operation unfolded over 3 days and required the team to overcome multiple unexpected complications that tested their ability to adapt their plans while maintaining mission focus. Sarah's performance throughout the operation was consistently outstanding, but it was during the final extraction phase that she demonstrated capabilities that would later become legendary among SEAL instructors. During the extraction, the team came under simulated enemy fire that separated them from their planned route to the extraction point. Thompson was playing the role of a wounded teammate, requiring the team to move him while maintaining defensive positions and continuing toward their objective. Sarah volunteered to provide rear guard security while the rest of the team moved Thompson to safety. Her performance during the rear guard action was remarkable for both its tactical sophistication and its selfless commitment to her teammates' safety. Despite being outnumbered and facing superior firepower, Sarah was able to delay the pursuing force long enough for her teammates to reach the extraction point safely. Her use of terrain, her marksmanship, and her tactical movement during the engagement impressed instructors who had years of combat experience. When the exercise concluded, Sarah's team had achieved complete mission success with no casualties and minimal deviation from their original timeline. The after-action review highlighted Sarah's contributions as being essential to the operation's success, but more importantly, it noted that her performance throughout the exercise had been indistinguishable from that of an experienced SEAL operator rather than a candidate completing training. The completion of field training marked the end of the evaluation phase of SEAL training, but candidates still faced several weeks of advanced instruction in specialized skills that would prepare them for assignment to operational teams. Sarah approached this final phase of training with the confidence that came from having proven herself in every type of challenge the program could present, but also with the humility that came from understanding how much she still needed to learn about the profession she was entering. The specialized training phase included instruction in advanced technologies, foreign weapons systems, language training, and cultural awareness that would be essential for operations in various international environments. Sarah's academic performance during this phase continued to reflect the same excellence that had characterized her approach to every other aspect of training. But perhaps more significantly, the final weeks of training provided opportunities for Sarah to work with instructors who were experienced SEAL operators and who could provide insights into the realities of operational life that no training scenario could fully simulate. These conversations helped Sarah understand not just what she would be doing as a SEAL, but why the skills she had developed were important to missions that had real-world consequences. As graduation approached, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her from a small town in Texas to the verge of becoming the first woman to complete Navy SEAL training. The physical and mental challenges she had overcome were significant, but she understood that the real test of her capabilities would come in operational assignments where the lives of her teammates and the success of important missions would depend on her performance. The woman who prepared for graduation was fundamentally different from the person who had begun training months earlier. The confidence she possessed now was based not on potential or preparation, but on proven performance under conditions that had tested every aspect of her character and capability. She had earned the respect of instructors and teammates who had initially questioned whether she belonged in the program. But more importantly, she had demonstrated to herself that she was capable of achieving goals that others considered impossible. Sarah's graduation from SEAL training made headlines around the world, but for her, the ceremony represented the beginning rather than the end of her journey. As the first woman to earn the Navy SEAL Trident, she carried expectations and scrutiny that no previous graduate had faced. Military leadership, media outlets, political figures, and advocacy groups all watched to see how she would handle the transition from training to operational assignments. Her first assignment was to SEAL Team 7, based in Coronado, California, under the command of Commander Michael Harrison. Harrison was a 20-year veteran with multiple combat deployments who had initially opposed the integration of women into SEAL teams. His concerns were not based on prejudice, but on practical worries about unit cohesion, operational effectiveness, and the additional complications that integration might create in already challenging combat environments. Harrison's first meeting with Sarah was deliberately formal and direct. He explained that her assignment to his team was not his choice, but that he would evaluate her performance according to the same standards applied to every other team member. He warned her that she would face challenges beyond those encountered during training, including skepticism from teammates who had not been involved in her training and would need to see her capabilities demonstrated in operational contexts. Sarah's response to Harrison's warnings was characteristically direct. She acknowledged that she understood the unique pressures of her situation, but she emphasized that her goal was simply to be the best SEAL she could be and to contribute to her team's mission success. She asked only for the opportunity to prove herself through performance rather than having her capabilities judged based on assumptions or expectations. The other members of SEAL Team 7 represented a cross-section of experienced operators with diverse backgrounds and specialties. Some had heard about Sarah's exceptional performance during training and were curious to see how her capabilities would translate to operational assignments. Others were skeptical about whether the standards during her training had been maintained at appropriate levels or whether political pressure had influenced her evaluation. Sarah's integration into the team began with a series of training exercises designed to assess her readiness for operational deployment and her her compatibility with existing team members. These exercises tested not only individual skills, but the team dynamics that were essential for effective performance in combat situations where coordination and trust could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophe. The first major training exercise involved a simulated raid on a compound, where team members had to coordinate their actions while adapting to changing conditions and unexpected complications. Sarah was assigned to work with Technical Sergeant Kevin Murphy, a veteran operator who had initially expressed doubts about her assignment to the team. Murphy's concerns were based on his experience in combat situations where physical limitations or hesitation could endanger the entire team. During the exercise, Sarah and Murphy were assigned to clear a series of rooms that intelligence indicated contained both hostile forces and civilian hostages. The scenario required them to move quickly while maintaining precise fire discipline and coordination. Sarah's performance during this exercise impressed Murphy not just because of her tactical proficiency, but because of her ability to anticipate his movements and provide support in ways that enhanced their combined effectiveness. Murphy later reported to Commander Harrison that working with Sarah had been seamless and that her capabilities exceeded those of many male operators he had worked with during previous assignments. More importantly, he noted that Sarah's presence had actually improved his own performance by forcing him to maintain the highest standards of professionalism and tactical precision. The success of Sarah's initial training exercises led to more complex scenarios that tested her ability to function in leadership roles and handle situations that required quick decision-making under pressure. One particular exercise involved a hostage rescue operation where Sarah was assigned as the team leader responsible for coordinating the actions of 4 other operators while managing communications with command elements and adapting the mission plan to address unexpected developments. The exercise began with intelligence indicating that terrorists were holding several hostages in a building with multiple escape routes and defensive positions. Sarah's team was responsible for planning and executing a rescue operation that would neutralize the threats while ensuring the safety of all hostages. The complexity of the scenario required her to coordinate with multiple supporting elements while maintaining direct tactical control of her team's actions. During the planning phase, Sarah demonstrated leadership capabilities that impressed both her teammates and the evaluating instructors. Her analysis of the target building identified vulnerabilities that others had missed, and her proposed approach addressed potential complications that could have resulted in mission failure. Her ability to listen to input from experienced teammates while maintaining clear command authority indicated a level of leadership maturity that was remarkable for someone with no operational experience. The execution of the rescue operation required Sarah to make several critical decisions when the situation developed differently than anticipated. When the team discovered that the hostages were being held in a different location than intelligence had indicated, Sarah quickly adapted the mission plan while maintaining coordination with supporting elements. When one of her teammates encountered equipment problems that could have compromised the operation, Sarah redistributed responsibilities in a way that maintained mission effectiveness while ensuring everyone's safety. The success of the hostage rescue exercise marked a turning point in Sarah's acceptance by her teammates. The operators who had worked under her leadership reported that her command style was confident, but not arrogant, decisive, but open to input from others, and focused on mission success rather than personal recognition. Commander Harrison noted in his evaluation that Sarah had demonstrated leadership capabilities that exceeded those of many officers with years of operational experience. As Sarah's reputation within SEAL Team 7 continued to improve, she faced a different type of challenge when the team was selected for a training deployment to an allied nation where they would work with foreign special operations units on joint exercises. The deployment would test not only her tactical capabilities, but her ability to represent American Special Operations Forces in an international environment where cultural sensitivity and diplomatic considerations were as important as military skills. The deployment took place in Norway, where SEAL Team 7 would participate in Arctic warfare exercises with Norwegian Special Forces and other NATO units. The exercises were designed to test interoperability between allied forces and to develop tactics for operations in extreme cold weather conditions. Sarah's assignment to this deployment was controversial among some military leaders who worried about how foreign allies might react to working with a female SEAL operator. The Norwegian Special Forces unit that SEAL Team 7 was assigned to work with was led by Major Eric Anderson, a veteran of multiple deployments who had initially questioned whether American standards for special operations had been compromised by political pressure to integrate women into combat roles. Anderson's concerns were based not on personal prejudice, but on his responsibility to ensure that joint operations would be conducted at the highest levels of effectiveness. Sarah's first interaction with the Norwegian team took place during a briefing where she presented her team's capabilities and discussed their approach to the planned exercises. Her presentation was professional and technically sophisticated, addressing tactical considerations and operational procedures with a level of expertise that impressed the Norwegian officers. Major Anderson later commented that Sarah's briefing had been more thorough and better organized than many he had received from male special operations officers. The Arctic exercises tested all participants' ability to operate in conditions where temperatures below -40 degrees Fahrenheit created challenges that went beyond normal military training. Equipment functioned differently in extreme cold. Human performance was affected by weather conditions that could cause frostbite in minutes, and tactical considerations included factors that were irrelevant in temperate climates. Sarah's performance during the Arctic exercises was outstanding in several respects. Her preparation for cold weather operations had been thorough, and her equipment selections reflected a deep understanding of the challenges posed by extreme conditions. Her physical performance was not affected by the cold weather as much as that of many other participants, and her ability to maintain focus and decision-making capability in harsh conditions impressed both American and Norwegian observers. During one particularly challenging exercise that involved a long-range patrol in extreme weather conditions, Sarah's team was required to navigate several miles of difficult terrain while carrying full combat loads and maintaining operational readiness despite weather conditions that would have been life-threatening for inadequately prepared individuals. The exercise tested not only individual resilience, but team coordination and mutual support in conditions where mistakes could have serious consequences. Sarah's performance during this patrol was remarkable for several reasons. Despite being smaller than her teammates, she maintained the same pace and carried equivalent equipment loads without requiring any accommodations or assistance. Her navigation skills proved superior to those of team members who had more operational experience, and her ability to identify and avoid potential dangers helped the team complete the exercise without any cold weather injuries. But perhaps most significantly, Sarah's performance during the patrol demonstrated leadership qualities that had continued to develop since her assignment to SEAL Team 7. When one team member began to show signs of cold weather stress that could have become dangerous, Sarah recognized the symptoms and took action to address the situation before it became serious. Her intervention probably prevented a medical emergency that could have compromised the entire exercise. The Norwegian Special Forces officers who observed Sarah's performance during the Arctic exercises were unanimous in their assessment that her capabilities met or exceeded those of any special operations personnel they had worked with, regardless of nationality or gender. Major Anderson reported to his superiors that the American decision to integrate women into special operations appeared to have been successful, at least in Sarah's case. The conclusion of the Norwegian deployment marked another milestone in Sarah's development as an operational SEAL. The international validation of her capabilities provided additional evidence that her training achievements had translated successfully to operational assignments. But, more importantly, the deployment had demonstrated her ability to represent American Special Operations Forces effectively in environments where diplomatic and cultural considerations were as important as military skills. Upon returning to the United States, Sarah faced a new set of challenges as SEAL Team 7 prepared for their first operational deployment to a combat zone. The deployment would take place in an unnamed Middle Eastern country where American Special Operations Forces were conducting counterterrorism operations against hostile organizations that posed threats to regional stability and American interests. The pre-deployment training for the combat assignment was more intensive and realistic than anything Sarah had previously experienced. The exercises included scenarios based on actual operational experiences, with threats and complications that reflected the realities of combat environments where enemies were genuinely trying to kill American forces. The training tested not only tactical skills, but psychological resilience and the ability to function effectively when lives were actually at stake. Sarah's performance during pre-deployment training continued to exceed expectations, but the imminent reality of combat operations created new pressures that affected all team members differently. For Sarah, the prospect of becoming the first woman to participate in SEAL combat operations carried additional weight beyond the normal stress of deployment preparation. She understood that her performance in combat would be scrutinized not just for its effectiveness, but for its implications regarding the broader integration of women into special operations roles. Commander Harrison's assessment of Sarah's readiness for combat deployment was unqualified positive. His reports to higher command emphasized that her tactical capabilities, leadership skills, and psychological resilience made her one of the most capable operators under his command. He recommended her for the deployment without any reservations or special considerations, noting that her gender had become irrelevant to evaluations of her operational effectiveness. The final phase of pre-deployment preparation included briefings on the specific operational environment where SEAL Team 7 would be operating, intelligence assessments of threats they were likely to encounter, and coordination procedures with other American and Allied forces operating in the region. Sarah approached these briefings with the same systematic preparation that had characterized her approach to every previous challenge. But she also understood that no amount of preparation could fully simulate the realities of actual combat. As the deployment date approached, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her from SEAL training to the verge of operational combat. The physical and mental challenges she had overcome were significant, but she recognized that the ultimate test of her capabilities would come in situations where her performance would directly impact mission success and the safety of her teammates. The woman preparing for deployment was confident in her abilities, but humble about the responsibilities she was accepting. The final team meeting before deployment was conducted in the same professional manner that characterized all of SEAL Team 7's activities, but there was an underlying tension that reflected the seriousness of what they were about to undertake. Commander Harrison addressed the team about their mission objectives, rules of engagement, and coordination procedures with other units. He emphasized that their effectiveness as a team would depend on each member performing their assigned roles while supporting their teammates in whatever ways might be necessary. Sarah's teammates had come to view her not as the first woman in their unit, but simply as one of their most capable operators. The respect she had earned was based entirely on demonstrated performance rather than political considerations or social expectations. As they prepared for deployment, her team members expressed the same confidence in her abilities that they had in any other team member, a recognition that represented the ultimate validation of her place among America's elite special operations forces. The combat deployment that would define Sarah's legacy began when SEAL Team 7 arrived at a forward operating base in a region where terrorist organizations had established training camps and supply networks that threatened regional stability. Sarah's first operational missions involved reconnaissance and surveillance operations that provided intelligence about enemy activities while testing her ability to function in actual combat environments where mistakes could have lethal consequences. The initial weeks of deployment confirmed that Sarah's training and preparation had adequately prepared her for operational realities. Her performance during patrol operations, intelligence gathering missions, and coordination with other military units met the same high standards she had maintained throughout her training and team assignments. But the deployment also revealed new challenges that had not been fully apparent during training exercises. The psychological pressure of operating in environments where enemy forces were actively trying to kill American personnel affected different team members in different ways. Some operators thrived under the heightened stress levels, while others required time to adjust to the realities of combat operations. Sarah found that her mental preparation for these challenges had been thorough, and her ability to maintain focus and decision-making capability under stress actually improved when the stakes were highest. Her first direct combat engagement occurred during a raid on a suspected terrorist facility where intelligence indicated that explosives and weapons were being manufactured for attacks against civilian targets. Sarah's role in the operation involved providing overwatch security while other team members entered the facility to gather intelligence and apprehend any personnel found on the premises. The engagement began when Sarah detected movement in an area that was supposed to be clear of hostile forces. Her identification of the threat allowed her teammates to avoid an ambush that could have resulted in casualties, and her precise engagement of enemy fighters eliminated the threat while maintaining the element of surprise that was essential to the mission's success. The after-action report noted that Sarah's performance during the engagement had been flawless and had contributed directly to the operation's successful completion. The success of Sarah's first combat operation established her credibility with coalition forces and higher command elements who had initially questioned whether female operators could perform effectively in direct combat roles. Her technical proficiency, tactical awareness, and psychological resilience under fire had been indistinguishable from those of her male teammates, providing compelling evidence that gender was not a determining factor in special operations effectiveness. As the deployment continued, Sarah participated in increasingly complex operations that tested every aspect of her training and capabilities. These missions included direct action raids against high-value targets, reconnaissance operations in heavily defended areas, and coordination with local forces whose reliability and capabilities varied significantly. Each operation provided new challenges and learning opportunities that contributed to Sarah's development as an experienced combat operator. One particularly significant operation involved a hostage rescue mission, where American contractors had been captured by a terrorist organization that was threatening to execute them unless their demands for prisoner releases and ransom payments were met. The rescue operation required precise coordination between multiple teams and perfect timing to ensure the hostages' safety while neutralizing the threats posed by their captors. Sarah was assigned to the primary assault team responsible for entering the compound where the hostages were being held and eliminating any resistance while ensuring the captive's safety. The complexity of the mission required her to perform multiple tasks simultaneously while adapting to rapidly changing conditions that could not have been fully anticipated during the planning phase. The execution of the hostage rescue operation demonstrated Sarah's capabilities under the most demanding circumstances possible. Her movement through the compound was swift and precise, her engagement of hostile forces was accurate and effective, and her coordination with teammates was seamless despite the chaos and confusion that characterized the operation. Most importantly, her actions during the critical moments of the rescue directly contributed to the safe recovery of all hostages without any friendly casualties. The success of the hostage rescue mission earned Sarah recognition from Coalition Command and established a reputation as one of the most capable operators in the theater of operations. But, more significantly, it demonstrated that the integration of women into special operations roles could enhance rather than compromise operational effectiveness when proper selection and training standards were maintained. The deployment continued for several more months, during which Sarah participated in dozens of additional operations that further validated her capabilities and contributed to her team's mission success. Her performance evaluations consistently ranked among the highest in her unit, and her leadership capabilities continued to develop as she gained operational experience and the confidence that came from proven success in combat environments. But it was during the final weeks of deployment that an incident occurred that would later become legendary in special operations communities and would provide the foundation for the confrontation that had first brought Sarah to the attention of military leadership. The incident began during a routine rotation of personnel when Sarah was temporarily assigned to provide additional security at a detention facility where captured terrorist suspects were being held for interrogation and processing. The detention facility was staffed by conventional military personnel who had limited experience working with special operations forces and who were unfamiliar with Sarah's background and capabilities. The facility's security procedures were adequate for normal operations, but the staff had not been trained to handle situations involving special operations personnel who possessed capabilities that exceeded normal military standards. Sarah's assignment to the facility was supposed to last only a few days while her regular team conducted maintenance on their equipment and prepared for their return to the United States. The assignment was considered routine, involving standard security duties that would allow her to rest and recover from the intensive pace of combat operations while still contributing to ongoing mission requirements. The personnel assigned to the detention facility included several soldiers who had expressed skepticism about women in combat roles and who viewed Sarah's assignment as an opportunity to test whether her reputation was based on genuine capabilities or political considerations. These soldiers had not witnessed Sarah's performance during actual combat operations and were influenced by preconceived notions about female military personnel. The situation that would lead to the legendary confrontation began when one of the detained suspects attempted to escape during a routine transfer between cells. The escape attempt was quickly contained by facility security personnel, but the incident raised questions about whether security procedures were adequate and whether additional measures needed to be implemented to prevent future escape attempts. Sarah observed the incident from her assigned position and noted several procedural deficiencies that had contributed to the security breach. Her analysis of the situation identified specific improvements that could enhance facility security while maintaining efficient operations. When she attempted to share her observations with facility leadership, she encountered resistance from personnel who questioned whether her recommendations were appropriate given her temporary assignment status. The tension between Sarah and some facility personnel increased when she was assigned to escort a high-value detainee to an interrogation session. The escort assignment required her to work with 3 male soldiers who had been critical of her presence at the facility and who viewed the assignment as an opportunity to demonstrate that women were not capable of handling high-security detention operations. The 3 soldiers assigned to work with Sarah were Sergeant First Class Robert Hayes, Staff Sergeant Michael Johnson, and Specialist David Wilson. All 3 were experienced military personnel with solid service records, but none had worked with special operations forces or understood the level of training and capability that distinguished SEAL operators from conventional military personnel. The escort mission required transporting the detainee from his cell to an interrogation facility located in a different building within the compound. Standard procedure called for multiple guards to ensure security while preventing any possibility of escape or rescue attempts by hostile forces. The mission was considered routine, but the value of the detainee and the intelligence he possessed made security a critical consideration. Sarah's approach to the escort mission reflected her special operations training and her understanding of security procedures that exceeded normal military standards. Her assessment of potential threats and her preparation for contingencies were more thorough than what the other guards considered necessary for a routine operation within a secure facility. The 3 soldiers assigned to work with Sarah interpreted her thorough preparation as evidence that she was nervous or uncertain about her capabilities. They made several comments about her approach that reflected their assumption that female personnel were inherently less capable of handling high-stress security situations. Their comments were intended to test her confidence and to establish their dominance in what they viewed as a male-dominated operational environment. Sarah's response to these comments was professional but firm. She made it clear that her preparation was based on operational best practices rather than any uncertainty about her capabilities. She emphasized that the success of their mission depended on all team members maintaining appropriate security standards regardless of their personal opinions about women in military roles. The tension between Sarah and her temporary teammates continued to escalate as they prepared for the escort mission. The 3 soldiers became increasingly dismissive of her input and began to treat her as a junior member of the team despite her superior training and operational experience. Their behavior reflected assumptions about female capabilities that had not been challenged by previous operational experience. The confrontation that would become legendary began when the escort team arrived at the detainee's cell to begin the transfer. Standard procedure required the detainee to be restrained with zip-tie handcuffs before being moved, a process that involved close physical contact between guards and prisoners. The 3 soldiers assigned to work with Sarah assumed that this task was inappropriate for a female guard and attempted to exclude her from the restraint process. Sarah's response was immediate and decisive. She explained that her training and operational experience qualified her to handle detainee restraint procedures, and that excluding her from essential tasks would compromise team effectiveness. When the 3 soldiers continued to dismiss her input and attempted to proceed without her participation, Sarah made a decision that would demonstrate the full extent of her capabilities. The legendary 2-second confrontation began when Sergeant Hayes reached for Sarah's arm to physically move her away from the detainee restraint process. His action was intended to establish physical dominance and to demonstrate that Sarah's presence was unnecessary for the completion of their mission. What Hayes could not have anticipated was that Sarah possessed combat skills that had been developed through years of intensive training and months of operational experience. Sarah's response to Hayes' attempt to restrain her was swift, precise, and devastatingly effective. In the first second of the confrontation, she used a joint manipulation technique that neutralized Hayes' grip while simultaneously positioning herself for follow-up actions. In the second, she applied a control hold that rendered Hayes completely helpless while demonstrating to Johnson and Wilson that any attempt to intervene would result in similar outcomes. The speed and effectiveness of Sarah's response shocked all 3 soldiers, who had never experienced combat techniques of such sophistication and precision. Hayes found himself on the ground in a control position that immobilized him completely while causing no actual injury. Johnson and Wilson froze in place, recognizing that they were facing capabilities that exceeded anything in their operational experience. Sarah maintained her control of Hayes for only a few seconds before releasing him and stepping back to allow him to regain his feet. Her demonstration had been precisely calibrated to establish her capabilities without causing injury or escalating the situation beyond what was necessary to make her point. Her control throughout the confrontation reflected the discipline and professionalism that characterized her approach to all operational situations. The aftermath of the confrontation was profound and immediate. The 3 soldiers who had dismissed Sarah's capabilities based on gender stereotypes found themselves forced to acknowledge that their assumptions had been completely incorrect. Their understanding of her qualifications and operational experience was fundamentally changed by a demonstration that lasted only 2 seconds but revealed years of intensive training and proven combat effectiveness. Hayes, who had initiated the physical confrontation, was particularly affected by the experience. His attempt to establish dominance had been neutralized so completely and professionally that he could not maintain any illusion about Sarah's capabilities. His respect for her abilities was immediate and genuine, based on first-hand experience rather than theoretical considerations. Johnson and Wilson, who had witnessed the confrontation without participating directly, were equally impressed by Sarah's demonstration of capabilities that exceeded their understanding of what special operations training could produce. Their previous skepticism about women in combat roles was replaced by recognition that individual capabilities were more important than gender in determining operational effectiveness. The escort mission continued without further incident, with Sarah's 3 temporary teammates treating her with the respect and professionalism that her capabilities merited. The detainee transfer was completed successfully, and the security procedures were executed flawlessly by a team that now understood each member's qualifications and contributions. Word of the confrontation spread quickly through the detention facility and beyond, becoming part of the informal communication networks that connected military personnel across different units and commands. The story of how a small woman had demonstrated superior combat capabilities to 3 experienced soldiers in just 2 seconds became a legend that illustrated the importance of respecting individual qualifications rather than making assumptions based on appearances. The incident also came to the attention of higher command elements who recognized its significance for ongoing discussions about women in combat roles. Sarah's professional handling of a situation that could have escalated into a serious disciplinary problem demonstrated the kind of judgment and leadership that characterized the most capable special operations personnel. For Sarah, The confrontation represented validation of everything she had worked to achieve throughout her military career. The respect she earned during those 2 seconds was based entirely on demonstrated capability rather than political considerations or social expectations. It confirmed that her place among America's elite special operations forces was justified by performance rather than symbolism. The legendary status of the confrontation would follow Sarah throughout the remainder of her military career, serving as a reminder that assumptions about capabilities based on gender or appearance could be not just wrong, but dangerously misleading. Her 2-second demonstration had taught an important lesson about the importance of respecting individual qualifications and the dangers of underestimating anyone based on preconceived notions. The story would be retold in military circles for years to come, serving as an illustration of how proper training, professional standards, and individual excellence could overcome prejudice and skepticism. Sarah Martinez had not just completed SEAL training or succeeded in combat operations. She had earned a respect that could only come from proven performance under the most demanding circumstances possible. The worthless girl that 3 soldiers had attempted to restrain had shown them, in just 2 seconds, why Navy SEALs should never be underestimated, regardless of gender, size, or appearance. The lesson they learned would stay with them for the rest of their military careers, serving as a permanent reminder that true capability could not be judged by external characteristics, but only by demonstrated performance under pressure.